Thank you for being here, Mr. Bernard Howard. You have a really powerful story. Like I said, over 26 years behind bars for a crime you did not commit. Back in March of 1995, I believe you were 18 years old. Before we get into the case, just tell me the young man that you were before this happened to you.
Well, to be honest, athletic, easygoing, you know what I'm saying? Love the kids, just love to play ball, be around the family, just having fun. I was young.
Just living your life, right?
Yes, sir.
So there were a series of murders. It happens in July of 1994, and you are approached by police by as far as being considered a suspect. They're asking you questions, and they and explain what happened. They basically let you go, but then they asked you to come back down to the police station, and they had this really intense interrogation. Break down what happens.
All right. So I had got wind that this man, Marcus Everett, had got killed. Marcus Everett had grew up with my family. He watched me grow up as a child. So we were very familiar. Every now and then I would go over and get me some marijuana from him. And he would always, kind of give me some because he grew up with the family. So he was always happy to see me or whatever. So when it happened, the police had pulled up on me, said they wanted to talk to me. So I went down there and talked to them, told them everything I know, who I was, gave them all my personal information. They let me go. Probably about the next day, walking up the street, police jump out a bunch of cars, draw guns on me, made me lay on the ground. But when they get up on me, it's like it's not him. I don't even think to know that this is tied into the other event. I don't know what's going on. So they let me off the ground, they jump in their cars and pull off. Then about 2 days later, they came to me again and said, your name came up or something. You need to come back down here and talk to us, clear your name up. So I went back down there. I was never arrested. I went willingly both times. Like they should have told him something. Don't know young black man in the middle of the ghetto go with the police when you know he done killed some people, man. That's absurd.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I went back down there again, and they ran a good cop, bad cop thing on me. They saw that I was very low educated, emotionally unstable. So, I had been getting high all night, smoking weed, drinking. So they kept me all night, doing their police badger. I wasn't used to nothing like this. I didn't know what was going on. They was, trying to make me believe that I committed a crime that I didn't commit. So once they seen that, I couldn't tell them something I didn't know, they brought in this officer named Monica Childs, and she brought in a statement from Kenneth McMullen. Kenneth McMullen implicated me in this crime trying to get a deal. So once he implicated me in this crime, that gave him a reason to come and get me a second time. So once she showed me this statement where this man had told him that I killed somebody and he was willing to testify to that, I didn't understand what was going on. They had me up all night. I've been drinking, I've been smoking, they've been badgering me. So I went into a state of panic. And I did what the woman told me to do. She said, well, we know Kenneth McMullen and this other guy committed this crime. So just do what I tell you to do because I'm your only help. The other police want to see you go to prison. So I'm just going to put something together that's going to get you home. Your mom and them out there waiting for you right now. So I went along with it, you know what I'm saying? She set up there, she created a falsified document. This document stated that I went over here on a Saturday night at 11:30 and committed this crime. This crime had occurred a day prior, which was Friday night, around 1:30. They had testimony from victims' family statements that it wasn't me. They didn't pay no attention to it. So they went on and sent me to prison. They used the jailhouse informant, told him what to say, and cost me 26 years. They built the case directly inside of 1300 Bovie, and there was nothing from the crime scene implicating me in this crime except that this man grew up with my family.
Yeah, this is really important. There's no physical evidence whatsoever. And I want to say the three men who were killed in July of 1994, I want to say their names: Marcus Everett, John Thornton, and Rashay Winston. And of course, it's
That's a
so
bull.
sad. Say it again.
Rashay Winston was Marcus Everett's girlfriend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that correction. And it's just so sad that they're no longer here. A really disturbing part of this, they have you sign this confession. You don't know what it is. I think it's important to bring this up. You really weren't able to read, right? You were young. You had dropped out of school, and they basically knew that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the same officer, Monica Childs, who had me sign that she had testified at a hearing that when she heard me try to read my constitutional rights, it was words I couldn't pronounce, it was words I couldn't read, it was words I didn't understand. This was her testimony.
Mm. It's just so sad that anybody would take advantage of a teen a kid in that way, a teenager who doesn't know, and they're just so hell bent on getting someone. Why do you think they decided to zero in on you? It appears that they knew you were innocent. Why do you think they decided to focus on you?
Well, I think the picture is like really a whole lot bigger than what everybody can imagine. I don't think it was a necessary thing that they zeroed in on me versus I think that the government had waged a criminal prison war against the Black community because at this time, their scientific research had told them that the human brain was done growing at the age of 13. So once they seen that, they went into their little phase where they started saying, well, if the brain is done growing at the age of 13 and these people are in an environment that's, criminal produce, then they're going to be super criminals because they have no other routes to go. So the call came down, and from that point on, they started arresting everybody in these Black communities for everything. That's why so many different people in different states all being exonerated. So it wasn't just that we targeting this area. It was that they thought we was going to be super criminals. So now they come back all of these years later, and the doctor tells them, no, we made a mistake. The human brain has stopped growing at the age of 13, but it hasn't been done developing. The human brain doesn't have hot and cold cognition. It doesn't get that until its late 20s, mid 20s. And a hot and cold cognition is if you put a reward in front of somebody who only has hot cognition, they'll do something stupid trying to get to that reward because they don't have the cold cognition to calm them and balance them. They don't have the grown adult thought. They only have a childish thought. And those childish thoughts bring about bad consequences. So now that they understand that the brain is steady growing, they're trying to reverse these laws and going back and saying, we made a mistake. Biden came on TV, said that was horrible, but we did that up under the Clinton era. He gonna fix it. He gonna sign this and do that. But that's what it was. That's why so many people from so many different places is now being exonerated. It wasn't just this area. They waged war, man. That came from the top.
Oh yeah, and we can't forget the even outside of the '94 crime reform bill, Reagan had this thing called the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, the 1988 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, and of course Trifle and Nixon were basically raging a war on black communities. All right, so
Yes.
for folks out here listening, we broke all that down. There's history behind it, but folks are still going to be confused. Well, how in the world did they convict somebody? Isn't there this thing called a trial and there's no physical evidence? So give us a little bit of insight on what this trial was like.
Okay, the trial was primarily based on it was three of us. Two of the men are still in prison, LaDon Salisbury and Kenneth McMullen. So what they did was you had significant evidence against these other men, some a little bit more than others. And when you stand us all in there next to one another and you put us in front of a jury, you have a false statement, but this statement is implicating these other two men. But then when you get to these other two men, you have significant evidence tying these other two men to this crime. So then you put jailhouse informants on the stand and say these other two men told them all three of us done it. So you just included me into a bunch of factual evidence through false pretenses.
There you go. That's how they do it. So you are convicted and your sentence is three different sentences of 20 to 60 for the armed robbery. When you hear that as a teenager, what goes through your heart? What goes through your soul?
When you really know for absolute certainty that you didn't do it, it doesn't dawn on you like you don't believe it's real because you know you didn't do it. So you have it in your heart and in your mind. I'll be home in no time. I ain't do this. Like you really believe that because you know you didn't do it. So although they're saying you're gonna do this amount of life sentences and you got to do these 20 to 60s, you just don't believe it. Till you get in there. Then 20 years later, you saying, "Hey, man, I might die in here." You know.
So, 26 years, how were you surviving the day by day, especially in the beginning? I mean, of course, when you think prison, you think fear, you think violence from not only the inmates, but the guards as well. So, how were you surviving the day by day, Mr. Howard, as a young man behind bars, wrongfully?
Well, the blessed thing about not having an identity as a young man and getting placed into a situation where you have to form an identity, then you don't have to go against who you are because you never found out who you was. So when you get sit into something like that, it's easy to migrate to whatever the rules is for your survival because you haven't fully blossomed into a man to make rational decisions no way. So when you sit somebody in a situation like that and the choice is homosexuality, violence, Muslims, you just adapt to whichever one you most more comfortable with.
When you say the choice is homosexuality, explain that? Explain that.
Well, you have guys that's what they call predators. When they see younger men come in there, especially younger white men, they apply a tons amount of pressure for sex. Some get physical and take it. Then you have an abundance amount of men who come in there who are already highly sexual active and just can't control themselves and, just turn full blown gay. Then you got, the people that's just gay. Like, so that's like so many people not going home. It's normal to see two men and really engaged in whatever they engaged in because you're looking at people who've been in there for 40 or 50 years. Murder
Right.
is in there is so heinous you can't shoot somebody in there, so you have to really be who you are. So if you're looking at people and they're just owning homosexuality at its full rankings like don't nothing else exist, then you got to understand that that's danger over there.
Do you think that they're gay or they're just in circumstances where there's no other option? If you're sexual, you're a young man.
Well, I think that in those circumstances right there, it's hard to tell, man, because you don't play on both sides. I just don't believe that you come in there and somebody turns you out. Like you have to already be something in you to allow a man to hump on you. Like something has to be in you like this. That's something that the normal man will give his life to stop from happening.
Hmm. So, how was your family impacted by this? You being behind bars, I believe you had a son and three daughters. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the impact of that, is significant because at the time that I arrived back into their lives, they full grown and their choices is made and some of their family decisions is made. And me going in there so young and coming out here and having a little time to catch up with my age bracket, my experiences with them is kind of rough, and I had to understand that, these, although people say kids, they grown. These are not kids. You just say that in a loving term, but they're not kids. And when you treat them like kids, it's gonna go bad because they're grown. Like they'll accept all the gifts and presents and all the smiles that you give a child. But then when you have to put authority as if they still a child, now you have a problem. So, those are one of the things that I had to come to understand with my children is, y'all go ahead and live your lives, man. Like we don't know each other. We're trying to get to know each other. We can't love each other with all our heart because at the time where it was crucial for us to love each other, we was prevented that love. And even when it came time to make the decisions to love on one another, the decisions was to move on. So we starting a whole new episode, not as children and father, but as grown people who want better for one another. And if we can't have better for one another, then, seed or not, bloodline or not, then you had to want better for yourself because I ain't never had nothing. So I can't come out and say, I want to save the world and do this for that person and do this for that person. And I ain't even experienced life in general. So you had to
What about
understand,
your what about your mother or your immediate family, folks who remembered you well before you went behind bars? How were they impacted?
my mother passed while I was in there.
Hmm.
And step out of the past while I was in there. The rest of my relatives, they had their own families to men for and take care of. So, that's just how I went. I had to fend for myself. It was,
What do you
it
feel
was
like you're?
every now and then a relative would pop up,
Hmm.
but I wasn't too eager to call anyone, especially if somebody tell you they come in 5 or 6 times and don't come. So you just say, I ain't gonna deal with that.
What was your lowest moment behind bars?
Well, it was two. It was two. It was two. My first lowest moment was when my mother passed away. You know, I'm still dealing with that right now. And my second lowest moment, this was before my mother passed away, but I had an uncle, he's still alive. And this man went to jail, the county jail, because him and this girl was fighting. I think he kicked her in her butt or something. And I sat here and watched this whole family of mine. That's why I call them relatives now. I watched all my relatives put all their money together to go get this guy to county jail because he kicked this girl in the butt. And here your nephew is sitting there for a triple murder, and y'all ain't give him $20. So I said I'll never forget that.
Hmm. Wow. So explain how you were finally released and exonerated. And of course, in Michigan, they have this thing called the Conviction Integrity Unit, which has really done some great things in Michigan. We've interviewed a lot of people who were exonerated that way because the corruption in Michigan is you would think it was Alabama. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But how how were you released, sir?
Well, I was in there. I fought my case all the way up to the United States Supreme Court by myself, man. I had to sit there. I got my GED, man, brought my education level up, and learned the law, man, and fought my case all the way through. It was just unfortunate because I didn't have no money, and it was such a bad case that I couldn't really even get them to look at the issue. So once I had Claudia Whitman had got in contact with me after seeing some interviews and looking at certain things in my case, she got on board with me. We unraveled some things together. So she told me to put my application together for the integrity unit. So I put the application together, sent them all the stuff I had come up with. They went in and reviewed it. They looked at all my criminal proceedings, my court processes, looked into everything that I was saying, because I just drew it out clear to where all they had to do was verify what I was saying and know I was innocent. So once they seen that, they was like, this man should not be in. There's no way possible this man should be in there. So they allowed me to come home on a teller so I could take a lie detector test. When it took the lie, they let me walk out of prison. Keep in mind, I had a triple murder. They just opened up the gate, let me walk out. Say tomorrow after you get home, find a way to get to this building, put on the teller. 2 weeks from now, we need you to go here and take this lie detector test. So if people don't know you innocent, who do they do that with?
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, it's interesting. Oftentimes, with these cases, Mr. Howard, we talk about the racial dynamics and I've covered so many cases where it's an all-white jury, all-white police officers, and so on. But your case is different. This person, Monica Childs, who had you sign this bogus confession, she's a black woman, and she's admitted to having doubts over key evidence from a lot of these cases. Is anybody being held accountable? Anybody whatsoever being held accountable for what happened to you and others?
Nah, man, all that's happening now is, guys is filing their lawsuits and that's it, but ain't no punishment coming down on these people. Monica Childs knew in her heart and her mind, like, I wish I could just look that woman in the eyes because when we was in an interrogation room and she had that false statement in her hand, she looked back at me, looked me right in my eyes. She said, what did that woman have on that got killed? And I told her, I don't know. She looked at me and dropped her head and walked out and sent me to prison anyway, man.
Wow, that is
And I've been thinking about taking a lie detector test on national TV just to show that.
that's and the other two who are still behind bars, are they wrongfully convicted as well? I'm not familiar with their case. Are they wrongfully convicted or no?
Well, I can't say.
Okay.
Like I don't even know the one guy, LaDon Salisbury. I don't know him. And
Gotcha.
it was like it was some things that was tying him to this that made that's why it was easy for them to send me to prison because you had the false evidence implicating me, but you had the factual evidence against him. But the false evidence implicating me said his name.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
So
So
it's yeah,
Once Monica Childs tied it in like that, then they brought the real evidence in. So once you
right.
prove them guilty, you just tie me to them through falsified documents.
So you were officially released December of 2020 after 26 years and 4 months behind bars. Uh, how are you doing today? How do you get over just spiritually, mentally, mental health wise, the trauma of being behind bars for 26 years? I mean, it's been over 2 years now, but how's your soul?
I tell man, I talk to a lot of the brothers that's still in there and a lot of the brothers that's coming home. And I tell them, one of the things that I regret is that I didn't come out and immediately start working. Like
Mm,
I'm working now, I'm at work now, but I should have came out and immediately started working because it takes a fraction of that pain that you went through away. It gives you something else to focus on. So when you come out and you focusing on that hour after hour after hour, it only just makes it burn worse. So now you find yourself getting into it with the people that's close to you. They don't know why y'all getting into it. You don't even know getting into it because you still hurt from what went on in there, but you arguing about something totally different.
wow. And before you go, tell us about the organization that you're working with other exonerees.
National Organization of Exonerees was founded by my brother Larry Smith, who was exonerated. He came out, and his first agenda was to knock on doors, to investigate cases, to help guys out. So we started together doing that. Congratulations, y'all making great progress, man. Let's keep up the good work. The National Organization of Exonerees, Larry Smith, Shamar Avery, Bernard Howard.
Well, sir, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. These stories are so important, and I encourage people. I have this thing that I say. I used to watch a lot of true crime shows, like, oh, we whatever. After doing this Exonerated series, I can't even watch those shows anymore because it's hard for me to even believe. It's like, is this
Yeah,
accurate, or did the police decide to trap so and so? I mean,
exactly.
there's so
Exactly.
much going on because corruption attracts corruption. So if you have a corrupt police department, you know, I've covered the craziest stories and someone behind bars for 20, 30 years. It's
Yeah, because people got to know, like, it's just not the police. This a whole body. Because the
right,
police takes this crap into the prosecution's office.
right.
And the prosecution's office take it in front of the judge. The judge is the gatekeeper. It got two different levels after the police where they can stop it. And they pursue it anyway. So it's just not the police. Ain't no way possible you can make somebody who's highly intelligent, been through college, sophisticated, you put something in front of them and say, oh, this man said he committed a crime Saturday night at 10:30 and no crime happened, and you prosecute him.
Mm,
And the judge allow it to go through.
hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you up the bat, but everybody in the infield, you ain't nowhere for you to go.
Right.
In that case, when they had an informant on the stand, the informant didn't even know my first and last name. The police wrote my first and last name in his statement. My lawyer asked this man, have you ever known my client first and last name? He said, no. As soon as my lawyer asked him, well, how did it get into your statement? The judge told him, get away from that, counsel. Come on now.